members of the European Union and world leaders are attending a three-day summit in Brussels. Among those attending the meeting are Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, European Council President Charles Michel, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, among others. Support for Ukraine's victory plan is top on the agenda, as well as a call for ceasefire and de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. The summit is also addressing issues of migration as members hope to find ways to tighten the bloc's policies on migrants and asylum seekers. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wasted no time to present his victory plan to the European Union, pitching the proposal as saying that it could end the war with Russia by the year 2025. On Wednesday, Mr. Zelensky unveiled the plan to the Ukrainian parliament. He also presented the 5-point blueprint to top Western leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and former President Donald Trump. Mr. Zelensky asked the EU to help bring his victory plan to life, as he calls it the pathway to peace between his country and Russia. He called for more military aid to help fight Russia's aggression. That's green light for Ukraine. And NATO General Mark Rutte has said that it will be a member of the bloc in the future. He also said the bloc will continue to support Ukraine for the long haul and wants to be in position of strength to see President Zelensky start talks with Russia. Mr. Zelensky's plan contains requests that Ukraine's allies have so far declined to grant, just as a call for an invitation to join the US-led NATO military alliance and the permission to use Western weapons to strike deep inside Russia.
In the future, NATO will have, as a 32 or 34th member, we will have Ukraine. At the moment, it seems that it will be Ukraine as number 33, but maybe somebody else pops in front of him. But Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future. That is what we decided in Washington. So the question is then about the timeline. We are in this, if necessary, for the long haul. And obviously, we want to be in a place where Zelensky and Ukraine, from a position of strength, is able to start talks with Russia. But till that moment comes, he can count on continuing support, and Putin cannot count on us letting go of that support. Well, all evidence is that Belarus, that Minsk, is supporting Russia in the war effort with infrastructure, with territory, and at a cost for your population, for the Belarusian population. I mean, Belarus clearly is not doing this from a position of strength. And that means that it is hurting you, the country. It's not helping you, and it is helping and supporting Putin in the war effort against Ukraine, and this has got to stop.
And Latvian Defense Minister Andris Kord has said he is giving his support for President Zelensky's victory plan, saying that Kiev must triumph against Russian aggression. Meanwhile, British Defense Minister John Healey called for more pressure on Russia so that Ukraine can come out victorious.
We see that there are also the necessity to upgrade air policing to air defense mission, that it's not just about dealing with Russian jet fighters, but also, as we see, with such objects as armed drones. We will see also the more detailed plan, but we support the victory plan. We believe that Ukraine must have victory against aggressor country. It is for all of us important. It is about the wider repercussions, implications. If we don't invest in supporting Ukraine as much as we can, as long as it takes right now, of course, the costs will be higher.
We, as Ukraine supporters, must do everything we can to step up our support for Ukraine in the weeks and months ahead, to put more pressure on Russia, to ensure that Ukraine can prevail, because the defense of Europe starts in Ukraine. They're fighting for the same values and same beliefs and same freedoms that we prize, and we owe them that duty to stand with them for as long as it takes.
More reactions now. Lithuanian president is already saying the victory plan presents measures to Western and European society could not achieve. President Zelensky had repeatedly asked his country to use Western long-range weapon to strike deep into Russia, a request that was denied by the West. The Lithuanian president called for the need to reach an agreement regarding Ukraine's membership to NATO.
If I look at this plan, I see the measures, the decisions we, the Western societies, we are not able to deliver in the last months and even years. First of all, about the invitation to NATO. I remember Vilnius NATO summit, I remember Washington NATO summit. We could not reach the consensus. And this is very important that we reach the consensus, because otherwise it will be not possible to get this decision. Second point of the Zelensky's plan is permission to target military facilities on the soil of Russia. Again, we are not able to deliver, we are not able to take the decision and to let them implement poorly defensive, actually, operation, because this targeting means not attacking Russia. This targeting means reducing the power to attack from Russian side, reducing Russia's offensive potential. The third or the third point of President Zelensky's plan is about delivery of some very concrete types of military equipment, long-range missiles and so on, etc. And again, we are hesitating. So nothing new, actually, in this plan, and I do not see any big issues put on the table. Just it is about our willingness and our commitment to support Ukraine. And it would be a great mistake to think that our hesitance is the best way to de-escalation. I think vice versa. Our hesitance is the best way, direct way to escalation. If we would support Ukraine, if Ukraine would be more successful on the ground, then I think Putin would be pressed to go to negotiations table.
And for Norway, solid and constructive conversations are needed on Ukraine's invitation to join NATO. Speaking during a visit to Ukraine, Norway's Foreign Minister Espen Barth says the country welcomes Mr. Zelensky's victory plan and it will help develop conversations between Ukraine and its Western allies.
We welcome that plan. We think it helps develop a good conversation between Ukraine and its best friends. It's up to you, but it's also up to us. And how do you first win the war? But also, how do we ensure that after winning the war, there will be no more wars? How can we talk about security guarantees, NATO membership, and so on, to ensure that it stays like that? Norway's very clear position is that the future of Ukraine is in NATO, and that this must be part of a final plan. We have to have very solid, constructive conversation inside NATO and with Ukraine about the exact modalities. But there should be no doubt about it that Ukraine, as long as it wanted itself, and it definitely wants it, is welcome into NATO, and we have to make that part of a settlement. Because one thing is stopping this war in a way that Ukraine prevails, but we also need to ensure that there is not a new one a few years later.
Кремль розуміє лише мову силу. Саме тому план перемоги, який президент Володимир Зеленський представляє сьогодні.
Joining us now is foreign policy commentator Collins Nweke. He joins us from Brussels in Belgium. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Well, it's another gathering of world leaders, members of the European Union in Brussels. Many are now wondering if this is yet just another gathering without results. What do you think will play out at this summit?
Yes, indeed, Anna. The EU summit is here with us again. And as a matter of fact, the focal point, like you mentioned, of this year's meeting is actually Ukraine. In this meeting, of course, the Ukrainian president will be presenting what he tagged, a plan to end the war with Russia. Now, any insinuation that this summit is a talk shop where much is said and nothing is achieved is actually misplaced, particularly when it comes to Ukraine. Let us remember that, but for the Western Alliance, particularly the EU and the United States, Ukraine would have been an easy walkover for Vladimir Putin of Russia, because that was essentially his plan to go in there swiftly, make his way to Kiev, the capital, take it all over, and that would be it. In a week or even less, it would have been, done and dusted. But that's not the case. They are actually having to deal with quite, a lot of resistance, a lot of, pushback from Ukraine. Now, the war is far from over, and that is why he has, this plan to end the war. Now, before assessing the viability or the level of acceptance of the plan by the EU leaders, I think it's important to, have a clear understanding of what the Ukrainian president is asking for. There are basically 5 key points of, his request and 3 additional addendum, which he said is going to be discussed only with Ukrainian, friends and partners. Now, in the package, he is requesting for Ukraine to be invited to the NATO military alliance. Let's not forget that this was one of the reasons cited by Russia for actually, going into Ukraine to invade it. Now, second point is he is asking for the strengthening of Ukrainian defense against Russian forces. As we know, Russia has been making some incursions. And then number 3, he is requesting for a containment of Russia via a non-nuclear strategic deterrent package that will be deployed on Ukrainian soil. Second to the last request is a joint protection by the US and the EU of Ukraine's critical natural resources and joint use of their economic potential. And then finally, there is this request for the post-war period that is targeted at post-war period only. And, that has to do with replacing some of US troops stationed across Europe with Ukrainian soldiers. Now, some who look at this plan would say, to what extent is this really, a peace plan, a plan to actually win the war, to end the war? Because looking at, some of the points raised, some of the, requests, I believe that they are actually aimed at escalation. Escalation in the sense that, when you are requesting, for your strength to be built, to be more fortified against, your opponent, it does mean that you don't have confidence in the fact that, your opponent wants to board. So, the EU leaders who have spoken have shown support for this, but they are also saying that they need to understand more of what this plan contains in terms of details, and indeed, further negotiations would have to take place.
All right, but there appears to be so much support for Ukrainian President Zelensky's victory plan to end the ongoing war. Do you see Russia in any way coming to the negotiating table?
Well, Russia coming to the negotiating table is a dicey one. I mean, if we were to go by the immediate reaction of Russia, you will actually conclude that the response to that is far from it. Russia isn't ready, based on this victory plan to come to the negotiating table. But Ukraine's strategy appears to be okay. We're not likely to get, the consent of Vladimir Putin of Russia. We're not going to get him to the negotiating table. And as a matter of fact, we don't even need him. We don't need Russia to actually push through this victory plan. All that he needs is the EU, to whom he's speaking, and then the United States. Prior to this meeting, he's held, consultative sessions with Biden, President of the United States, but also were the two contenders for, the presidency of the United States, essentially, trying to show up, support for his plan. Now, you have to understand that without EU support, like, I mentioned earlier, Ukraine would have been, a territory of Russia by now. But that help continues to increase, and he continues to ask for more. Well, indeed, if at the end of the day there is an, adapted version of, the victory plan that everyone can live with, well, it means that the war is actually not ending today, but at least in the long run, it looks like, what the Ukrainian president is hoping for is a situation where Russia is actually beaten to submission. Submission in the sense that, the more they see how much strength that Ukraine has gathered, and the fact that, they are not likely to win the war, and Ukraine is not ready, far from it, to give up any of its territory, which is what Russia is, asking for. The moment that they see that, there is distress in the country, and economically they are going down, and their troops waning, that, they will then be forced to come to negotiate. But is that going to happen in the immediate? Far from it. So it's a long path to walk.
Well, we also know attention will be paid to the crisis in the Middle East. Nowhere is safe in Lebanon as we speak. Millions have already been displaced, and the war between Israel and Hamas also is in the picture. How much impact and significance can the EU summit have in ordering an immediate ceasefire in these regions?
Yes, indeed, Anna. Some attention is definitely being paid to the crisis in the Middle East with the Israeli, Palestinian war ongoing and escalating. There appear not to be peace anywhere anymore in the world, and I think what they will be looking at, critically is how best to continue to exercise pressure over Israel to stop the humanitarian crisis that is actually eating up, Gaza. The U.S. A couple of days ago actually sent a warning and ultimatum, a 30-day ultimatum. Now, do I see Europe following in the same line? Not necessarily, but I think they will use other strategies. And I mean, if one or two countries, around the world have already done that, for instance, recognizing Palestine as a nation state and establishing or taking steps to establish diplomatic relations with them, speaking out against Netanyahu. I believe France, one of the countries that came out, at the beginning of the war to solidly stand behind Israel, has now spoken out against Israel and calling it out in a major way. I believe that, you know, it is likely that Europe, at the end of this summit, will come up with a joint statement with the aim of actually exercising more pressure on Netanyahu to take steps in actually ending this war, particularly you know, the humanitarian tool that we have seen in Gaza. Exactly what, you know, that statement is going to be remains wait and see.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Collins Onweke, foreign policy commentator. Thanks for your time and your contribution on The World Today.